Good evening. Welcome in daily UPSC editorial audio program. Eco Novel gets real. Times of India. Relationship status. Ensuring a proper social safety net for the gig workers. The Hindu. Now the full editorial. Eco Novel gets real. The Times of India. 2024's winners explain real world outcomes by studying institutions that's highly relevant for India. This year's economics Nobel winners are Daron Daron Acemoglu, Simon Johnson, James Robinson is refreshingly rooted in reality. The Nobel Committee appears to have listened to years of criticism that there is a disconnect between prize winning work and real problems on ground. Yes, Amartya Sen won his work on welfare and poverty, but since one of a handful of outliners. So, this year's award for research on outstanding institutions' role in prosperity is a nod to what economics is expected to deliver. The laureates don't offer solutions to inequality but have demonstrated the importance of societal institutions for a country's prosperity. Their research traces the roots of institutional trajectories, studying how different colonial strategies led to choices institutions made. This institutional divergence had varied outcomes. India's industrial production, for example, exceeded the American colonies in the 18th century. Colonized part that were the most prosperous 5 centuries ago are today among poorer nations. The gap in prosperity between nations today is a consequence of such historical transformations. The point Ekimoglu emphasizes is not about the nature of colonialism but how it altered institutions. Support for democracy is at an all-time low because democracy hasn't delivered what it promised: jobs, stability, and quality public goods. Authoritarian populist leadership styles imperil institutions. When institutions fail, democracy falter. Job creation to law and order to delivery service delivery globally. Center felt and center right parties are now associated with wage stagnation and rising inequality, but democracy is still best equipped to address today's challenges, including climate change, immigration, and threats to regional stability and peace. AI adds to the complexity on which the laureate says it is naive to trust in the benevolence of business and tech leaders. They have linked the challenges of AI to Britain during the Industrial Revolution. It took major political reforms to create genuine democracy, to legalize trade unions, and change the direction of technological progress. The same basic challenge confronts us today. On Monday, Ekmoglu signed off saying it is for institutions to reclaim the high ground in order to deliver the promise of democracy, a message highly relevant for India, whose strong GDP growth hides many fault lines. Relationship status: Jaisankar's visiting a Pakistan that's diminished since 2019 but is yet to do course correction. When ex-Pak Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari visited India last year for an SCO meeting, there was no bilateral meet with Jaisankar. Neither will Jaisankar formally meet his current counterpart during the SCO summit in Pakistan. These visits show India and Pakistan investing in being good mm, good members of SEO, not in a reproachment, which is impossible, as India has made it clear without verifiable Pak action against cross-border terror. Cross-border terror. Are there any sign Pakistan is changing Like in India, the partisan generation is passing on. A Gallup poll slowly shows nearly half of Pakistanis feeling that the younger generation is wiser than their elders when it comes to politics. This generation acutely feels feels how much the Indian economy has pulled ahead. Lately, this feeling has been exacerbated by how painfully the internet has been slowed in Pakistan, hurting freedom of expression as much as inflicting financial blows, and nobody lobbies for trade normalization with India more than Pak business. Pakistan's Kashmir card is also played out. It downgraded the ties with India after India nullified uh, Articles 370 and 35A. But thanks to strengthened ties with the West and the Islamic world, New Delhi has also nullified Pakistan's international anti-India diplomacy. Finally, note how much this major security meeting is taking place with Pakistan going all out to ensure that it does not end up commenting its reputation as a country that's not seen as safe. As Jasankar has said, uninterrupted dialogue with Pakistan is over. It is more for its own sake that our never needs to course correct. If it does, India will get interested. Ensuring a proper social safety net for the gig worker, the Hindu. Defining employment relation in gig work is the key. Kingshuk Sarkar is a faculty member at the Goa Institute of Management and former labor administrator with Government of West Bengal. The Union Ministry of Labor and Employment is drafting a new law to incorporate gig workers into social security schemes, offering benefits such as health insurance and retirement savings. The government is expected to require aggregators to contribute 1 to 2% of their revenue to establish a social security fund which would provide health insurance and other benefits. The government is also revising the definitions of gig and migrant workers to make them more inclusive and reflective of current employment realities. The proposed legislation will establish a welfare uh, board model, creating a fund for the social security of gig workers. It mandates the registration of all gig workers and requires uh, aggregators to give a 14-day notice with valid reasons before termination, while ensuring transparency in automated systems. Dispute resolution mechanism will also be introduced to protect gig workers' right. The labor minister also pointed out that aggregator companies that employ gig and platform workers will be asked to take the lead in registering their workers on the portal. Workers registered on the labor ministry's e-shram portal are eligible for life and accidental insurance along with other benefits. Labor codes. In this context, it can be mentioned that India formulated four new labor codes in 2019 and 2020. These codes essentially simplified and rationalized existing labor laws and enabled 29 central labor laws to be merged in four broad codes, namely wage, social security, industrial relation, and occupational safety health working condition. The only code where gig and platform workers found mention is the Social Security Code 2020. In this code, gig and platform workers are perceived as a subset of informal sector workers. Accordingly, the said code provided for the formulation of social security schemes for gig and platform workers by the central government. Further, like informal workers, gig workers ought to register themselves under the e-shram portal through self declaration. Worker definition. The issue arises from the definition of gig workers in the Social Security Code 2020, which places them out the traditional employer-employee relationship. This is problematic since many gig employers, as in some of the well-known companies, operate the formal entities within the formal sector. The exclusion of gig workers from the traditional employment framework is the crux of the problem. It is a deliberate ploy on the part of the aggregators to demystify employment relations in gig and platform economies, such as the application of existing labor laws get preempted. In a gig economy, employment relations remain ambiguous, and workers are categorized as independent workers or contractors. Such ca- camouflaging of employment relations lead to the misconception that the gig worker is an independent worker. The Social Security Code 2030 accepts this deception and includes gig workers as the part of the informal sector. The code does not decipher the real employment relation in the gig and employment economy. Also, there is a huge difference in the terms of entitlement between institutional social security and social security schemes. For example, formal workers gets 26 weeks of paid leave along with job security for the entire period of maternity under the Maternity Benefit Act 1961. This is part of institutional social security coverage. Under social security schemes for maternity benefits, there is a cash benefit such as 5,000 to 10,000 given to registered informal workers. The gap between the institutional social security and social security scheme in terms of entitlement is very clearly evident. The Social Security Code 2020 sets to provide gig workers with only certain social security schemes but not institutional social security. Similarly, other forms of institutional protection such as minimum wage protection are missing for gig workers. Occupational safety and health regulations do not apply for gig workers. Gig workers are not included under the Industrial Relation Code 2020 and are not covered under the dispute resolution mechanism provided thereunder. The the cornerstone of protection under labor law is the explicit employment relation. This is what is not defined for gig work in the Indian context. Pieces of legislation introduced in recent times in states such as Rajasthan and Karnataka also suffers from this particular lacuna. The core issue: if the Union Ministry of Labor and Employment is serious about protecting the interest of an ever increasing number of gig workers in the country, it should define the employment relation in gig and platform in an explicit manner and remove the veil created by so-called aggregators. Recognizing aggregators as employers and reclaiming explicit employment relation in gig work is the key factor. An important precedent here is the ruling by the UK Supreme Court on the Uber case in 2021. Uber was deemed to be an employer, Uber drivers as workers, and Uber asked to honor the prevailing labor laws of the land. Once the employment relationship is clearly defined, gig workers can be included under the proposed four labor codes, eliminating the need for separate legislation. The welfare board model, as suggested by the Union Ministry of Labor and Employment, has shown limited effectiveness in past, particularly with construction workers who were also classified as normal despite working for formal employers. Clarifying the employment relationship in gig work would further promote the formalization of workers in this sector. Moreover, the entire labor code was designed for simplification and rationalization. Introducing separate laws for a specific workforce segment undermines this goal. The key is to recognize the employment relationship in gig work. Once this is addressed, the rest will follow. Thank you.